Audible is audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, the listeners of the CreepGeeks Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/CheapGeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/CheapGeek for your free audiobook. Enjoy this with your free trial. 30 days of membership free, plus 2 free audiobooks that are yours forever. 1 credit a month after trial, good for any book regardless of price. Exclusive member savings. Get 30% off additional audiobooks. Easy exchanges. Don't love a book? Swap it for free. Anytime, seriously. Again, that's audibletrial.com/CheapGeek for your free audiobook today. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast, Season 5, Episode 215.
In this episode, Morgellons Syndrome Disease, Upright Bear, and UFO Detector Disarmed.
Yeah. So here we are again. If this is your very first time tuning into the podcast, glad to have you here. If this is your second, third, fourth time, welcome back. Anyway, glad to see you. Yep. Okay, so anyway, this particular podcast is about all sorts of paranormal type stuff, weird stuff, funny stuff we see on to be, kind of interesting on the internet and funny. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's unintentionally funny. Right? So anyway, this particular podcast, the CreepGeeks Podcast, has been around so far for 215 episodes.
Yep.
I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah. It's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, moving back into the podcast, we are glad to have you here. We have a telephone number that you can call if you'd like to share something with us, because if you do share something with us, we will put it on the internet. We'll put it on the podcast.
Yes, and that phone number is going to be 575-208-4025.
Yeah. Because what we are is we're an offbeat news podcast, takes a lighthearted approach to the paranormal, cryptid, strange, supernatural, silly. We basically find stuff that's interesting and we put it on the internet.
Yes.
Right? And we do investigations and such, and we try to take adventures in our albino rhino, our contest winner named Adventure Van of Destruction.
Okay.
And with this van, we go places, we travel. Well, here recently with the COVID thing and everything else that's involved with COVID, we did not do so much.
Yeah, so instead we're also sharing people's stories if they've got them.
Yeah.
That's why they should
So
call in.
we're trying to get out there and go see and do more stuff.
Now, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we'll be ready to go when it's really hot and sticky. So, spring's kind of the best time for this sort of thing, I think. But you know what? We're going to save it until summer where it's hot.
And miserable.
Yeah. So hot that carpet sticks to you if you lay on it.
That's only a problem for us lately because A, we're getting older, and B, we're on the East Coast.
What?
It's the humidity. Like, I didn't...
Sticking to carpet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of humidity and just the dampness. So,
Dank.
Yeah. And I don't really remember a lot of that in New Mexico.
Well, we didn't really have any carpet in New Mexico.
That's true.
Yeah, it was a nice, cool tile. So it was very hot and dry. Lots of dust and stuff.
I don't know. I'll take dust over humidity sometimes. So
Yeah.
Well,
humidity sucks because then you wind up sweating in your own eyes.
And then your sweat has sweat. It's gross.
Yeah. It's terrible. So anyway, check it out. We have some stuff to talk about. And so before we move into the podcast, we're going to talk about this. We have a 14 term of the day.
Yes.
And that 14 term is what?
It's ripple effect. In particular, ripple effect as it pertains to the paranormal. And our 14 term of the day is brought about as a ripple effect to me searching on the internet all evening for a term that I could not find, but eventually found ripple effect. Anyways, a ripple effect occurs when an initial disturbance to a system propagates outward, to disturb an increasingly larger portion of the system, like ripples expanding across the water when an object is dropped into it. Now, in the Fortean and paranormal community, this term includes actions prior and post the initial event or disturbance. And an examples of that would be the silence some people account for right before like a Bigfoot or cryptid experience, or the green flash some experiencers have before they see a ghost or a UFO incident. Because those prior and post events that happen within that paranormal experience can be attributed to the experience as a whole. Therefore, they also matter in the ripple effect and may actually lead to the event itself. Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
It's interesting, and it actually helps me understand partially the term that I was looking for all night and still haven't found.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of a cop-out term, and because ripple effect, typically something has to happen before other things happen, right? And the way they make this seem is it includes actions prior and post the initial event.
But within the Fortean and paranormal community, that prior and post, just like the paranormal event itself, was that thing that happened attributed to the human observance of it. So that's why those events.
Then that goes back to Schrodinger's cat, and also goes back to the tree fall in the woods and the butterfly effect. Right?
Exactly. So
I just think, I don't know. See, and this is also can be referred to as the Weinstein or Weinstein effect, right?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of, I don't know. I don't see ripple effect being that way.
Okay.
Necessarily. I'm not disagreeing with you or trying to argue with you. I'm just saying that I think it's pretty self-serving for the people that think up this, that came up with this term, this idea, right, with the ripple effect as it occurs in paranormal. Like saying, oh, the stuff that happens before the event, and the stuff that happens after the event, that's all the ripple effect.
And part of the argument in that statement right there is, that I'm having trouble with, is if victims or experiencers do not include some of those prior events, then did they have an authentic, or did they even have a real experience or not? Like, you wouldn't believe how many people, once it got out that Sasquatch has a bad smell, if they don't say that during their experience, then some people are out there dismissing those.
Well, there's just as many. There's other people out there that say that Sasquatch doesn't have a smell.
Yeah.
That it's the skunk ape that has the smell.
Yeah, exactly.
But bears have smells. So it's kind of. I don't know. See, this is what I don't like about the whole idea when it comes to paranormal stuff, right? Is they make it vague, and they use the vagaries, right, involved in situation, because the entire thing is vague.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, right? You seen something? Did you see it? Did you not see it? Could it be easily recreated? What is it? But it's like when you include terminology like this to include the vagaries that may happen before, during, and after the event, or whatever it winds up being, it just doesn't. And
categorizing those vagaries as a part of the ripple effect in the Fortean community, categorizing them as a necessary part of the ripple effect makes it exclusionary, and that's what I have a problem with.
Yeah, and it also depends on the person that's being involved in whatever the experience is. What if they weren't aware of what was happening up into the point where something actually happened?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, for a UFO experience, like, if you didn't see the green flash, well, maybe that's because you were looking north.
Or maybe it's because that doesn't necessarily apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
whoever figured this out and called us, yeah.
Yeah. So that's...
I mean, it's a cool idea, but I think that in order to have a ripple effect, and I know what they're trying to do by including the before, the during, and the after, and all that sort of thing, and make it all encompassing. Say the entire thing is an effect. It to me, it's like chicken and the egg, right? Which one came first, and which one causes the other?
Yeah, and which one is of greater importance, the experience itself or the factors around the experience?
Yeah.
Which is why it's our 14th term of the day, because
there you go.
As people interested in paranormal, you need to be aware of this type of terminology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good job. I don't like that one.
Okay.
That one's not as fun as something else, but whatever. I'm just saying. I couldn't think of anything. That was the whole thing.
Oh.
So speaking of weird, this is something that sort of ties into something else, and I can kind of see. Anyway, let me let the page load, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in North Carolina, and this is kind of old. I can't say it's kind of old. It's not that old, but it's like a couple weeks old. An upright bear in North Carolina draws comparison to Bigfoot, because you got this bear just kind of standing up, hanging out. Yeah. Right? Looks like he's got his hands. He has his little paws like kind of over his belly a little bit, and he's just kind of looking around, right?
Yeah.
And so what I seen was the first article I seen was upright bear in North Carolina draws comparison to Bigfoot. And I think this is first. Okay, so the article I read first showed up in the Charlotte Observer.
Yeah.
But then I read another sort of article from, let me click it so I can get back up here. You know, the Singular Fortean Society. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of went through and took a look at both of them, and I was just amazed at how this bear has good posture. You know what I mean? He's standing up, he's doing his thing. He's not like, it's weird, okay, because he looks like a person standing there, or looks like a tall, sort of a skinny person wearing a bear suit.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that sort of rounded in the middle kind of bear shape thing going on.
Oh, I'm in this group.
And so if I seen this bear standing there, or if it was nighttime and I seen it standing there and he looked any more shaggy than he did, I would probably think it's Bigfoot. Or something.
So if you go to the original post in the Carolina Critters public Facebook group, the photo she posted, a lot of people aren't paying attention to the actual caption form. This is in Pungo.
Yeah.
So it's technically...
Well, you got Pungo, North Carolina, Pungo, Virginia.
Yeah, but isn't that like the border?
It's in the swamp, man.
True. And if it's that time of year...
Well, it's east... Okay, so it's like East Carolina.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is still part of North Carolina.
If it's that time of year, these bears are hungry. And if you look at the photo of them running, because there's two bears, it looks like they're very gaunt. You know?
Well, it's that time of year, they're kind of skinny.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a youngster.
Yeah.
But, you know, this person seen the bear, and they said it seemed wholly unbothered by us, right? Mm-hmm. And, and the bear standing there, and it kind of gave him a little side eye, kind of looked at him, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of looked away. You know, and the idea of a bear standing up itself is not unusual, as they routinely do so to get a better look at their surroundings. But the way this thing stands, I mean, if you have an idea that Bigfoot may be out there and you have an interest in it, the first thing you're going to think is Sasquatch because of the way it's standing. Then the second thing you'll think will be bear. Because it's standing in a way that, you know, it looks like, it's funny because it's clearly a Bigfoot in a bear costume, right?
Well, okay, so not too much the first picture, but the second picture that I'm looking at where the bear is actually turned towards the camera and the vehicle.
Yeah.
That skin doesn't necessarily hang a way I'm comfortable with on the frame of the creature that it is.
Hey man, I don't like the way your skin hangs.
It does kind of hang like a draped on costume on a humanoid figure.
Doesn't it? It looks like it's a bipedal hominoid under most conditions, but the way its skin hangs, it may be something different.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I kind of looked at it, and and here's one of the things I can't say I hate. Hate's a strong word. I don't necessarily like talking about things that involve pictures because, of course, if you're listening to an audio podcast and later on you're like, or if you're listening, you're like, man, I wish I could see that, and you can't really see that, and I get it, especially if you're driving your car doing whatever, right? Well, we do include all the notes and links to everything we talk about in our show notes, and you can go to CreepGeeks.com and check it out there. But yeah, I first read it on Charlotte Observer, and then I seen it again on Singular Fortean Society, and I kind of, put them both in there. But because I kind of think that the picture looks better on Singular Fortean Society's page, it's much larger. But I'm looking at, and here's the thing, it's like they talk about the swamp and how the skunk ape sightings and things like that can happen, and the run-ins between bears and humans become more frequent and all that. And honestly, I just kind of glanced over all that stuff because I didn't really care about it so much as I keep getting drawn back to the picture. He's just standing there looking, minding his own business. Looks like he's looking down across the road or whatever. sees a car, turns his head towards it.
Yeah.
He's just like a person. He looks completely comfortable standing there. He doesn't have any kind of weird bent to him or looks like he's standing uncomfortably. He just looks like he's standing just fine.
Like a neighbor on a porch watching people go by.
Yeah, a guy standing in his yard watching you drive by all slow. And that's what I think the picture makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, because
the longer you look at it, the more you're like, just seems kind of odd. It's like this bear has shoulders. I didn't think bears are supposed to have shoulders. It looks like he does.
And conservationists are going to be like, well, the reason he is so comfortable is because of like serious encroachment. But this is in a park, And
and he is standing on a little bit of an incline. But.
Yeah. And where was it? Pocosin Lakes National Wildlife Refuge. Yeah. So it's a wildlife refuge. You should see bears even in eastern or swampy parts of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm bothered by is a statistic in this article where Fish and Wildlife is stating that in this particular area, 4 bears per square mile.
That's a lot of bear.
You don't even get those stats like in
Alaska.
You do get them in Alaska, but not like Asheville, North Carolina or something, in the mountains. That seems a little high for that particular area.
Yeah.
So.
But I do like the part in here where it says, cryptid researchers argue that it seems unlikely that someone would confuse a quadrupedal bear for a bipedal hominoid under most conditions. And many in the field would agree that this, is seen to be a quick glimpse of something large and dark in a heavily wooded area, and the chance of misidentifying a bear exists. But many among the strongest reports come out of the South involve a much clearer view of the creature. And that kind of goes back to some of the things I've seen in the past, which sort of bugged me a little bit, where you'll have somebody, a stranger, a reporter or whatever from like New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about some dude in Alabama who had a sighting of something, and then basically disputing what the dude in Alabama seen, saying, oh, he may have misidentified that as just being an owl.
Yeah.
It's like, do you think that dude who lives in Alabama, who's a country boy, right?
Yeah.
Who grew up there his entire life would know the difference between an owl and something scary? More than likely, probably more than some dude in New York City, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like that happens a lot with some articles where somebody who's, investigating from afar doesn't necessarily, I think, give credence where credence is. Because I got to be honest with you, I know what a bear looks like. We've seen them, we live around them a little bit. We've kind of been out there. But if I seen this, if it was even remotely dark,
yeah,
and I was cruising by in the car and I seen that, my first thought would not be bear.
True.
I mean, honestly, I'm like, whoa. Of course, I would back up and try to see what it is, but
and see,
granted, you're in a park, so you're probably not going to be going like 50 miles an hour. But if you were going faster, you'd think, holy, what was that?
Yeah.
So.
And here locally, we do have a lot of issues with encroachment the more north you go to where we live right now, to the point where some of the most popular hiking trails, even people's residences are being, having bear disturbances. But you can recognize a bear.
Yeah, so, hats off to this Erin McAllister person and her East Carolina student boyfriend, Zachary Allen. They took the pictures. They look pretty nice. They're in focus and everything. Yeah. And that's part of what makes it so weird, too, is that these aren't your typical, shot with a potato paranormal pictures that you see. It's like they obviously stopped, tapped the screen, and focused and took a good picture.
Yeah. And she's in the same group as me, so I'm looking at her other pictures.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, there you go. Thought that was kind of cool, something to kind of look at there. So if you want to, go check out singular14.com because we have a link there and they have some pretty interesting things, including a nice clear picture of the Bigfoot wearing a bear costume. Yeah, I don't know. So I put it in there because I'm like, I wasn't even going to talk about it because we see that kind of stuff a lot where you'll see like, oh, hey, what is this? And you look at it and it's obviously nothing, but the picture, I'm like, man, that's just, the more I looked at it, the more I didn't like it for whatever reason. It just made me uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Well, I've seen bears just do stuff that you're just like, that's just not natural, Like,
yeah, but you still kind of have the overall impression that whatever it is that's not natural is a natural thing doing an unnatural thing, right? And that's kind of weird, too.
Yeah, but like last year during the pandemic, and people who lived in like Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge who live there and they're not tourists,
yeah,
and they're taking pictures of bears sitting at picnic tables,
just
waiting for tourists to show up.
It's funny, whenever I see pictures like that, I default to Russian bears.
Yeah, that's true.
Where they're like people's pets, where they teach them how to drink vodka and smoke and stuff, and ride like little bicycles and motorcycles with little hats on.
They had
little
one,
fezzes.
though, and the bear was sitting, like, properly at the picnic table, waiting for tourists to get out of a hotel.
Yep. It's
Just
like,
waiting.
It's kind of like when you see a raccoon in a trash can, just chilling, waiting. He just knows you're going to drop some fries or something on him, right? So, or at least that's what he hopes, Or when you see a bunch of bears just kind of lounging in the bushes next to a Pizza Hut. Because I've seen that before. You're like, look at those big bushes. Oh, those are bears. What are they doing there? And they're like, just throw it away, dude. We'll get it. Don't worry. And they would rather eat the pizza than, eat you because it's easier. It's like, which one would you rather do? Attack and possibly fight off with somebody or just go get a, chunk of pizza? Get some pizza bones out of the trash.
It was coyotes for us, remember? Like,
coyotes are doing it too.
We went to like Dion's or something.
Yeah.
And it was the coyotes waiting for me to throw stuff away.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 of them just kind of sitting there. They look like dogs just waiting. So go ahead, man, chuck it.
They were.
And then if you go to Virginia, you got the same thing with seagulls. Right, anywhere close along the water, anywhere in Virginia, there's be a bunch of seagulls hanging out in the parking lot going, you going to eat that fry, man? But they're more like...
They're aggressive.
Yeah.
Which is funny that a seagull is more aggressive than a coyote.
That's because they think they could just fly away. Most of the time they do. But sometimes if you time it just right, you can blast them with your car door if they get too close. So, yeah.
What's more aggressive, Bigfoot, a coyote, or seagull?
Yeah, it's probably a combination. Anyway... So speaking of UFO detector, I seen this and I had to put it in here because this looks like some stuff that I would make. Right? Mm-hmm. So police disarmed this UFO detector in New Jersey State Park. And when you see the picture, and again, it's one of those things where it's, I hate talking about stuff where it's a picture, but it's a picture of this device. And it looks like a 2x12 piece of wood with another piece of wood on top of it, a skinnier piece of wood on top of that. So steeped, almost like a pyramid with a soup can on top of that. Some wrapped wire that looks like maybe a 2.8 millimeter or 3.5 millimeter headphone connector wire, wrapped around it.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is painted UFO silver. You know what I mean? Like when you see people on TV and they're kind of like painted up with this silver color, like, oh, look at me, I'm an alien, right? Whenever they do like parades and stuff, painted that color silver. And there's a stick next to it. It's a blaze orange stick with some kind of antenna weird looking thing with a piece of paper or a flag on it, and it's just this weird thing in the woods.
See,
and it says New Jersey State Park Police were alerted to a UFO detector installed in the woods and dispatched a detective unit and a bomb sniffing dog to the area. Right?
Yeah.
This is according to Facebook. And it says the device was carefully disarmed by New Jersey State Park police personnel by unplugging the headphone wire from the block of wood and the soup can it was plugged into. Right? And I'm like, oh, okay. And it says with UFO detector number 448 out of service, we might not know when they arrive.
Oh.
What? Like, what? I just want to know what this is. It's obviously non-functional. And maybe it was put there. I don't know why it was put there. That's the thing. Is this a joke? Is this like part of a movie? Is this some, weirdo dude doing something? Or is this like a real thing?
Geocache. It's a geocache. That's what it is.
No, why would it be a geocache? It's out in the open. Anybody can see it.
Because New Jersey has a long history of these little treasure hunting games.
I know, but you know what? Most geocachers are nerds of a different ilk. And they're going to be out there like, oh, I'll hide this geocache in a hollowed out pine cone. They're not going to make it obvious like this. This is like some weird weirdo stuff. Like somebody hearing stuff is like, okay, I'm going to take this soup can, paint it silver, plug a headphone jack into it so you can plug a headphone cord into it, and then basically attach it to, a what looks like a maybe 10 by 12 chunk of wood and put kind of like one of those orange fiberglass antennas that you stick in the road so you don't like when it snows, you know what I mean?
Okay,
like what do you call them? Like,
markers. I don't know.
Yeah. But I want to know. And why does it say UFO detector number 447?
Does that mean there's 4?
Or 448?
Yeah.
Yeah, where's the rest of them? And do they actually work? And do they come together as a grid?
Ooh.
Like, what's the point, man? That's what I want to know. And so I have deliberately not, to the old, let me just copy and paste this and throw this into a search engine to figure out what UFO detector search results may bring up. But yeah, it's just kind of weird. It says UFO detector number 448. It looks like it has almost like a little antenna. I don't know. Maybe there's some kids that were out there playing. Maybe maybe some youngsters are together thinking they're actually building some UFO detecting type stuff. Maybe they watched that movie. There was a movie that came out like in the 80s or something like that where these kids put all this junk together and go flying off into space. I can't think of what it was called, but yeah. Well, I thought that was a headline that definitely deserved talking about. Police disarm UFO detector in New Jersey State Park. But I like how he disarmed it, though, right? Probably the toughest, hardest bomb detecting thing, bomb diffusing situation to ever be in, where he unplugs the headphones from the soup can.
The dude has spent countless hours training.
Yeah. So he's probably in there. I'm going to write something on this so that next time people run across, or maybe they run across like UFO detector number 446, or even earlier, maybe they'll know exactly how to diffuse it
and
disarm it.
Here's a problem with this. Even if we were to use our Google foo, and try to research UFO detector 447 or 448 or whatever, because of news, we're only going to find the news articles. They're stacked so much.
Yeah.
So we might not know.
We'll probably have to use something like DuckDuckGo or Tor browser or something like that to maybe get a better, But I don't know. I mean, it is on a quality news site called boingboing.net, so there's that. Yes. All right, so I thought that was kind of interesting. And, we're going to take a quick break and roll back into the podcast. When we come back, we're going to talk about a mystery tree beast.
Oh.
So, yeah, as soon as I figure out which button to press, I'll tell you that you're listening to the CreepGeeks Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Audible is audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, listeners of CreepGeeks Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/cheapgeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook.
And we're back.
Yep.
That was quick. Okay, so, whenever you see Mystery Tree Beast, you're going to have to click on it.
Okay.
If you like talking about paranormal and weird stuff, and aside from the investigation stuff that we do, came across this. And I had actually heard this from somewhere or read it somewhere. And I'm like, okay, well, the gig is up. It's been figured out, whatever it is, and it wasn't a big deal. But then I clicked on it and realized that I think it's funny because the picture, again, this is a podcast where we're talking about pictures, and I don't like doing that, makes it look like this thing is crazy. It just looked like some weird thing in a tree.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this is from BBC News, and I don't know where it originally came from, but this looks like something Europe would do. And it says, when animal welfare officers, I can't talk today. When animal welfare officers received a report of an unusual animal lurking in a tree in the Polish city of Krakow, right? They weren't sure what to expect. And I'm like, okay, first off, I don't know where Krakow is, evidently somewhere in Poland, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it says, people aren't opening their windows because they're afraid it will go into their house.
Oh.
So some woman said that. I'm like, oh, that's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because I got to be honest with you, Krakow doesn't look like a central air conditioning kind of town. It's like old Eastern,
Eastern European block type.
Yeah,
style.
At least that's what it kind of reminds me of. But so it's like, oh, man, right? But a visit to the area showed the creature in question was not a bird, not even a reptile, but a croissant. Right? It says, writing on Facebook, the organization said that its officers had asked the desperate caller whether the unidentified animal, which had been in the tree for 2 days, could be a bird of prey.
Ah.
Right? And the woman responded, it said it looked more like a lagoon, which is similar to laguna in Polish for lagoon, right? Before remembering the correct word, leguan or iguana.
She mistook a croissant for an iguana.
Yes. Now, the picture makes it look like this thing is a foot long and like 5 to 7 inches wide. That's a huge croissant. And if you just walked by or looked out your window and seen this random slug looking thing.
Oh my God. It's kind of, wow.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be kind of freaked out by it too, right? I don't know if I would call the cops. I'd probably try to poke it with a stick.
To me, it looks like it's like a very bushy red tabby cat or a red squirrel.
Well, having spent some time in Colombia.
Yeah.
The land where Shakira comes from.
Really?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I can't think of any famous Colombians aside from
Pablo Escobar.
Yeah. I thought at first when I first looked at it, I thought it was a sloth.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Like maybe a juvenile sloth, because they have some, they almost look like orangutan sometimes. They get hair, you know. I just thought it was a sloth, right? But no, it is a giant croissant. So, although the inspectors knew that it was unlikely a reptile would survive the cool spring temperatures in the southern polar city, they wondered if the animal could have been an unwanted pet or abandoned by its owners, right? Mm-hmm. So, arriving at the scene, however, the inspectors found that the headless, limbless object in a lilac tree was a pastry, probably thrown out of the window to feed birds, right? So the organization remained lighthearted about the encounter and said that the public should continue to err on the side of caution and report any concerns about animal welfare.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So somebody got tired and like, you know what? Let me throw this big-ass croissant out the window and feed the birds. And this kind of reminds me of the article we talked about where the person was out in the woods or walking through a field and found a zombie foot. Right? But it wasn't a foot. It was like a mushroom. Yeah. It's like, oh, my God, it's a foot. Oh, a dead body foot. Yeah.
Remember when I did that Facebook post about the moon being beautiful and I took a picture of a croissant?
Yeah, and you got all the hate for it.
People reported my post.
Yeah, because people have no sense of humor. It's like, yeah, I'm going to report you because I didn't think it was funny.
I was like, wow, nature is amazing. The moon is beautiful tonight.
Yeah.
And it was like a Pillsbury croissant
I know.
roll.
You know, one of the things that I think is funny is that when you posted that little chihuahua with a hat on, remember he had a ball cap on backwards and he said, please pray for this turtle?
Yeah.
And people got so worked up over that. It's just like,
I think I had like
I'm going to report you.
I
It's like, report me in my face.
Yeah, I had a 7-day ban from that.
Yeah. Because people don't have sense of humor and they get all like offended about the internet.
Yeah.
And to those people, I'd like to say there's a couple things you can do. You can click away and go somewhere else. You could basically turn the volume down. You can turn the volume up. You can scroll. You can click something else. Or you can just not be butthurt about stuff that you see on the internet because it's the internet. And guess what? The internet doesn't care if you're actually butthurt or not.
No.
Because my favorite is when people do that to my YouTube channel where they go, just to let you know, I'm going to unsubscribe right now.
But the internet does care. You know why?
But no, hold on. No. Who cares? No. And you know what I say to that, right?
What?
I didn't know you existed until 2 seconds ago. So, how am I supposed to feel about that?
I don't feel.
Yeah. I don't either.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, the algorithm is feeding, self-serving, that kind of thing. But anyway, I'm going to take a quick drink of coffee.
Okay. But, man, we should just do cryptids found in trees and just take pictures like this one and post them.
You can't give away our plans, homie. Then people will know what we're going to do before we do it, and then somebody else will do it and say, look at this, look what I did.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, you did not come up with the hot dog on the stick. That was my idea.
Actually, that's still our idea. So
there you go. Anyway, I thought it looks like a big-ass croissant. It looks huge.
that is,
Now, it's kind of hard to tell from the scale of the picture, but it does look pretty large. Maybe it tasted like trash, and somebody said, a bird will like that.
Well, I'm sitting here like, how did they throw this croissant at such an angle that
They probably just whipped it out the window, and luck took it, luck be a lady, right?
Yeah.
Just do it and said, boop, going to sit in the tree.
Yeah.
And they probably looked out the window and looked down and go, where did that go? It's gone. A bird must have got it. Like, nope, it's in a tree branch right outside your window.
What bird is going to carry away a big old croissant?
Condor. Pterodactyl.
Europe?
Thunderbird.
Thunderbird.
Yep, you can feed Thunderbirds croissants. So they travel. Yep. Just like that picture we posted, that cloud looks like a Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Or Rodan.
And that's on our Instagram.
Instagrams.
Because we are on Instagram.
Yep. Just look for CreepGeeks. You'll find us. Okay, so Morgellons disease or syndrome is something that I've seen a long time ago, and I meant to do some quick research on this, but I think, and I'm not for sure, so now I actually got to look. The first time I've ever heard of this in a way that made me interested was on the X-Files.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that show from the 90s, and some of you guys are so young, you're like, I never watched that show. It's like you just babies. Just little ones.
Nuh-uh. I was at least.
I'm not talking about you. I said some of you guys. If you're offended by that, scroll on. Right?
Yeah.
So I just did a quick search on Morgellons disease on X-Files, and it says Morgellons, a case straight out of X-Files Medical. But I thought it was, I don't know. If you are a fan of X-Files from the 90s and all that, and you remember, If you remember an episode about Morgellons on the X-Files, or at least mention of it, let me know. Because for some reason it seems really familiar in an X-Files kind of way.
And it's funny because when you search the internet, it just kind of says, is this X-Files or Morgellons disease?
Yeah. So here's what Morgellons is.
Yeah.
And there's some debate to this whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. And according to the medical description from Wikipedia, right, it says Morgellons is poorly understood, but the general medical consensus is that it's a form of delusional, right, parasitosis or stosis, however you say that, in which individuals
parasitosis.
What?
Parasitosis.
Which individuals have some form of skin condition with sores that they believe contain fibers. Its presentation is very similar to delusional parasitosis, right? With the addition that people with a condition believe that there are inanimate objects in their skin lesions. And there's an active online community that supports the notion that this is an infectious disease, and they dispute that it's psychological and proposes an association with Lyme's disease. As the controversy has resulted, of course, publications largely from a single group of investigators describe findings of spirochetes, keratin, and collagen in skin samples in a small number of patients, and these findings are contradicted by much larger studies conducted by the CDC, which found that skin samples mostly contain cellulose that come from cotton, with no evidence of infection or other causes.
What?
So, maybe it was Coast to Coast AM and Art Bell. Anyway, with this particular stuff, Morgellons, it was like these people had fibers growing out of their skin, these painful fibers, and some of them were like metal and kind of fibrous, like carbon fibers, weird, like just growing out of their skin. If you ever watch any horror movie, like even The Fly, for example, where like this little fly hair starts to come popping out of the skin, it was kind of like that, but they were small, and these people were like suffering from this crazy disease, and they were itching and all this, like crazy itching because they had this, these lesions, and they had these fibers and stuff coming out of the skin, these weird sort of, obviously non-biological and human sense, material coming out of their skin. It was driving them nuts, and they would go and seek help, and people would say, "Oh, you're delusional.
Yeah.
You have a lesion with fuzz in it. Or carpet fiber or whatever." And they're like, "No, it's growing out of me." They're like, "No, it's not." And it's like, "Oh, well, since you've used drugs in the past, right? Since you think this is coming from some otherworldly UFO whatever type thing, then you must be delusional." Mm-hmm. And since you feel sick the whole time, and it just basically they kind of tied it all together, almost like saying like, "Oh, you have chronic fatigue syndrome. You have delusional aspects of it. You were using drugs and drinking from, however long in the past. So all this is all in your head."
Yeah. So it was like a compounded, oh, well, you have all these other things that we can describe.
So that's what we're going to put it off on.
Yeah. Instead of saying 3 or 4 criteria that are already far reaching in themselves, you have a delusion.
Yeah.
But why not just go with, okay, here is the symptom. Let's analyze the symptom. And that
because then you have to explain the symptom and what's coming from the symptom. And it's just kind of like,
and this argument,
so they're saying it's a neuroses,
Yeah. And this argument from the CDC study that it was, were likely cotton or cellulose and like from fuzz, like you were saying, in a wound. That contradicts the CDC, who is aware of certain illnesses where you can have lesions that grow like skin horns.
Yeah.
Or the certain types of hepatitis or certain types of vitamin A deficiencies that cause horns to grow,
Yeah.
Like the horned guy in Southeast Asia, where it's just like this weird mutation he has. But no, they're going to say, oh, none of that exists when it comes to talking about this. This is all delusional. This is all psychological. And I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Like this lady examined basically the sores on her son. Her son said that he had bugs coming at him, right?
Yeah.
Because he had sores on his lip. And, she took her son's toy microscope and discovered that he had red, black, blue, and white fibers in his skin, right? Went to 8 different doctors and were able to find any disease, allergy, or anything unusual. right? She described her son's symptoms and stuff, and she went to John Hopkins, and this person was there for that she talked to, kind of like House, right? And he has a reputation for solving mystery cases.
Yeah.
And the guy Heldrich found nothing abnormal about the boy's skin, and then he was referred to a physician, and then said that the person, her mom, or his mom, I should say, would benefit from a psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some Morgellons in my throat.
Oh.
It makes me itch.
Stop. That's so creepy.
Yeah. So basically Morgellons is, these fibers growing out of people's skin.
Yeah.
But right now, I think it's actually starting to become more.
Well, the result of this Leto, a Mary Leto person.
Leto, I think.
Leto being basically ostracized by the traditional medical community.
It's not surprising.
Yeah.
They
ended up basically forming the Morgellons Research Foundation.
Right.
And it became an official nonprofit in 2004. Their website states the purpose is to raise awareness and funding for research into the proposed condition, described as a poorly understood illness which can be disfiguring and disabling.
And see, the entire reason why I put this in here, where is this coming from? How can your body just grow like synthetic fibers?
So I know a little bit about dermatology, not enough to say anything with authority.
So you're saying you're not a dermatological professional?
No, I'm not. Now,
as a person that has skin.
Yes, as a person who has skin, I can understand how not just hair follicles, but skin follicles and things like birthmarks, moles, things like that. I can see how those would cause an underlying condition, but not to the extent of the Morgellons disease characteristics that I've seen. Because I saw this stuff back in the late 90s, early 2000s on the internet, where it'd be like one website with these really uncomfortable videos and uncomfortable photos, and you're just long, I'm talking several inches long, spindly, silvery white fibers coming out of these
characterization would be foreign materials such as fibers, threads, or obtained from people from their skins, right?
And then you had different types where some, it would seem like it was biological in matter, and some, and this delves into probably what we're about to talk about, some metallic or non-biological in origin.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
So,
anyway, that's all we're going to say about that.
Yeah.
It's just some weird stuff, and it kind of leads into fringe medicine and everything else. But, I don't remember where. That's the whole problem. I remember knowing about it because it was either X-Files or Coast to Coast or something like that where, people were growing foreign material or it was coming out of their skin. And the idea was that it's possibly, UFO and aliens in nature kind of a thing, but I don't know. So anyway, if you know where I may have heard this from.
Yes. Is this an episode of X-Files or Coast to Coast
or somewhere like that? Yeah.
Some sort of very convoluted, Mandela effect.
Something.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not one to sit in a library looking at dusty books reading up on weird phenomena. So chances are you probably heard it or seen it or know about it from a pop culture place like television.
Yes.
Or movies.
And let us know. Contact at CreepGeeks.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. I think at this point we're going to go ahead and take a second and wrap up the podcast. But just to let you know, our next podcast, we're going to talk about a place we went to called Littleton, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And Manic Mountain or Modoc Mountain. I don't know. I still don't know how to say it.
Okay. Half the locals from around the general area, when they'd walk into the Paranormal Museum, they're like, we're staying at Medoc Mountain. And I'm like, oh, I've been saying Medic Mountain the whole time. Yeah, it's Medoc.
But I didn't think it was. I thought it was basically Medoc.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Well, anyway, we went down to Littleton, North Carolina. We went to the Bigfoot and Paranormal Museum down there. What's the actual name of it? See, that's the thing. I think I'm messing it up. Anyway, went down there to go see a man about Bigfoot, if you will. So that's something we're going to touch on. But anyway, do you remember what it was actually called?
It's the Cryptozoology and Paranormal Museum of Littleton.
That's what I said.
Yes.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think at this point we're going to go ahead and take a second to wrap up the podcast. There's a bunch of different things that are out there on the internet for you to kind of check out and peruse. Small town monsters, man. Anything small town monsters. And Lyle Blackburn has a hot sauce that's coming out. That's pretty interesting. So, yeah, I kind of want to get some.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's gonna be,
I seen it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I like hot sauce.
Yeah.
I don't like it when it's so hot you can't taste your food and it burns your rear orifice. Right? But I still like it. So yeah.
I like flavor.
Yeah, flavor.
So
there you go. So anyway, I think that's probably about what we're gonna do there. Just gonna.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to find us on social media. Like we said earlier in the show, we do have an Instagram. That's going to be CreepGeeks Pod. If you look for us on Instagram. We also have a TikTok, so find us at CreepGeeks Podcast. We'll be posting some shorts on there. Additionally, our little trip to Littleton, we're putting exclusive first look content on our Patreon. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, it's going to be patreon.com/CreepGeeks. Everything we talk about in the show is in the show notes with links and other helpful info. So if you want to look back at whatever we talked about, it'll be there in the show notes for the podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd like to thank our patrons too.
Yep.
Should go ahead and thank them.
Thank you, Dave, Isis, James, Bobby, John, and Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's and to Dave, congratulations for starting a new adventure.
Yes.
So I'm going to leave it at that because I don't know how far we can go with that. So, plus this is a test to see if Dave made it all the way through the podcast.
We should start doing
No, that's not, because we'll just be disappointed.
Like a secret word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secret word of today is phalange. So. Anyway, I think at this point we're going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Be sure to tune in. We do this every week, and so we have lots of new stuff to talk about and some stuff coming up in the future when it's hot and sweaty. So anyway, see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.